This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. Episode number, I did forget to check again, but I think we're on about 363. Anyway, today we have a bit of a different episode. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh God, but I think this might be a great episode. Okay, it could possibly be one of the best. It could. Okay, now let me quickly tell you, I wasn't actually going to make an episode this week because I have actually been sick. I had planned to record this podcast yesterday, but maybe you can still tell from my voice I was too sick to do it. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to make a podcast for Monday. But then in the last few days, I've received quite a lot of nice messages from people saying that they have listened to the podcast and they've really enjoyed it. They've been laughing and it's just made them feel really good, a real good vibe to the podcast. And that kind of inspired me because sometimes I must admit, I think, does anyone really care? Does anyone want to listen? So every now and again when I get a message of appreciation, I stop, I read it, I really try to take it in because it does mean a lot to me and I am very proud and very happy to spread good vibes around the world, especially, in the world we live in today. There are lots of problems. I'm not going to go into them. I don't think it's my responsibility to try to save the world, but just bringing some joy and happiness to people's lives is a thing that I am particularly proud of. So in the end, I thought I am going to make an episode and I want to try and spread some good vibes, okay? And I thought, what can I do? And then just an hour or so ago, I was putting my children to bed and I read them a story and I thought, you know what? This story must be shared, okay? It's one of the most beautiful, beautiful stories. You don't need to have children to enjoy it. In fact, as I kind of mentioned a bit earlier in this episode, in the world we live in today, I think this story is very important. I think world leaders could read this story. In fact, the author actually says this. So this story is for anyone that maybe lives away from a loved one. I know lots of people live in different countries. Maybe you are away from your parents, your brother, your sister, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it may be. Maybe you live far away from someone that you deeply love. Maybe you have a child who lives in another country. Now, that happened to my mum, for example, and my dad for a long time. I lived in another country, and I know that's not particularly nice. I lived through COVID, for example, when it was impossible to travel. I didn't see any of my family and friends for one whole year, and I suffered a lot in that time. Because I was living in Italy, they were all living in England. So this story is for anyone that is far away from a loved one, and obviously anyone that maybe has lost a loved one. I think most people in life have. I didn't actually lose anyone really close to me till I was 30, and then I lost some grandparents, and that obviously is, a very difficult thing to deal with. So this story is also for anyone that has lost a loved one, okay? Anyone that has lost a loved one or is far away from a loved one. And also, as mentioned, just to bring some love into the world. Now, the story is called The Invisible String, okay? Now, I'm not going to read it word for word. I'm going to do what I kind of do with my children, which is kind of read it and kind of just go a bit freestyle, okay? Are you ready? Let's go. Once upon a time, there was a little girl asleep at night. It was a calm and quiet night. Then suddenly it began to rain very hard. Thunder rumbled until it got so loud that it woke her up. The little girl cried, "Mummy, Mummy," and she ran out of the room to find her mum. Her mum said, "What's the matter?" And the little girl said, "There's a big thunderstorm and I want to stay close to you because I'm scared." Then her mother calmly responded, "Well, you know that we're always together, no matter what." The little girl was confused and said, "But how can we be together when you're out here, but I'm in the other room in bed?" At this point, her mother held her 2 hands up in the air and said, "This is how." The little girl was confused again. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and said, "What is that?" because her mother was just holding her 2 hands up in the air. Then her mother said, "Well, I was about your age when my mum first told me about the invisible string." The little girl was confused again and said, "String? I don't see a string. What the hell are you talking about, Mum?" And then her mother said, "Yes, you can't see the string because it's invisible, the invisible string." Now the little girl was intrigued. She was interested and said, "How does this invisible string work?" And her mother said, "Well, people who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." And the little girl said, "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" And the mother said, "Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love." Now the girl was slightly happy. A smile was starting to develop on her face as she was trying to understand how this invisible string worked. So she said to her mother, "So when I'm at school and we're not together, are we connected by the string?" And her mother said, "Yes, absolutely. In fact, when you are at school, I always feel connected to you by the invisible string. In fact, I pull the string just so you can feel it." And the little girl said, "Wow." So her mum said, "Next time you feel me pull your heartstring, make sure you pull it back." And the little girl said, "Yes, absolutely." But then the little girl said, "But just how far can this string reach?" And her mum said, "Anywhere and everywhere." So the little girl said, "Well, what if I was under the water in a submarine? Would it reach there?" And her mum said, "Yes, absolutely." Then the little girl said, "Well, what if I was in space? Would it reach there?" And the mum said, "No problem." And then the little girl asked a very intelligent question. She said, "Can my string also reach Grandad, who lives in heaven?" And her mum said, "Of course it can." And now the girl's smile on her face was starting to get a bit bigger, but she was still curious. And she said, "Does the string go away when you're angry at me?" And her mum said, "Never." Her mum continued, "Of course there will be times when I am angry at you, but because I love you so much, the string will always be there because the string is made of love, and that is stronger than anything else, including anger." And now the girl had a huge big smile on her face. And then her mum said, "Right, now I think you should go back to bed." So the little girl walked back to her bedroom, got into bed and went, "Ah." The little girl was now so calm, so relaxed, so happy. Even though the thunderstorm had not stopped, the thunderstorm continued. It was still so loud. But now the little girl was not scared. The little girl was so happy. She was lying in bed with her hand on her heart, just holding that string, because she knew at any moment she could pull that string and her mum would feel it. But then the little girl started thinking of all the invisible strings she has, of all of her friends and family around the world. And then she thought about all of the strings that they have, as they are connected to all of their friends and family too. And even their friends and family are connected to their friends and family. It just never stops. And she thought about all of these strings in the world and realized that everyone in the world is connected. Everyone is connected by these invisible strings. And then the little girl realized something very important. if we are all connected by these invisible strings, no one is ever alone. So that is the story. As I mentioned, I have adapted the story a bit. If you buy this book, The Invisible String, it's called, you will realise this story is a little bit different, not really very much, but I have just adapted a few things. Now, you may have listened to that thinking Martin is a total idiot, but I hope at least one person has listened to this and it has really struck a chord with you and maybe even brought a smile to your face, like the smile on the girl's face. Now, I also, just before I go, I want to just read a couple of things from the back of the book, okay? The author of this book is called Patrice Cast. I'm not sure if that's correct pronunciation. And she says at the back of the book, The Invisible String was born in 1996 when I was a full-time working single mum. As I dropped off my son at preschool each morning, he would cry so hard that it broke my heart. So I told him that an invisible string made out of love always connected us. In fact, not only would it connect us all day long, but forever and ever, no matter what. Which I thought was very nice, because I have also done that, seen my children upset sometimes, never too much, but similar situations I have found myself in, and it really is not very nice. However, she also goes on to say, to the leaders across the globe, please read this book and act accordingly. Perhaps it takes a children's book to help you see that we are all connected. We are one, and it is time to heal our planet. The more love, the more invisible strings, and the more strings, the more we are connected, and it will help us to live happily ever after. Now, I also just elaborated on that bit a little bit. It doesn't say it will help us live happily ever after, but I thought that would be a good way to finish the podcast. So I hope I have brought some positivity into your life, and I have used a few pieces of vocabulary which maybe you hadn't heard of before. I'm not sure. So hopefully you also learned a piece of vocabulary. If you would like to let me know if you enjoyed this podcast, please do, because as mentioned, I do enjoy receiving these messages, and as this is not the normal type of podcast, it would be good to get some kind of reaction as to how it was received. If you think it was terrible, you can also let me know. I won't be particularly offended. I just won't make any of these episodes again in the future. But I've literally just decided that I am going to post a picture of this on social media, okay? So if you would like to give some feedback, go to Instagram or Facebook, look for Rock and Roll English, and you will find a post connected to this podcast. And please let me know what you thought of it, good or bad. Remember, I will not be offended. So thanks a lot for listening, people. Please remember to pull your invisible strings so loved ones know that you are there. I literally tell my children this every day now. When I go to work, I tell them that I am pulling the invisible string, and I say, don't forget to pull it back when you feel me pull it. And we all touch our hearts, and it's a lovely, lovely moment. All thanks to this book and Patrice Cast. Highly recommended, by the way. So thanks a lot for listening. I will talk to you very soon. But in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.